All right, everybody, want to take a second to talk to you about an amazing sponsor. We have an amazing relationship with RayAllen.com. Ray Allen is a one-stop shop for everything dog, not just working dogs. Everything dog that you need, you can go down there, check them out, RayAllen.com. Awesome people. They got everything you need.
Another one of our favorite partnerships is with a dog trainer. They've been with us from the start. Great collars, great ball poppers, great GPS tracking, big dog, small dog, bark collars, everything. I got everything like that they have at the kennel. We use it every day. Be sure to head them up, dogtrainer.com. Listen for the discount code later in the episode.
HITS 2023 is being held in Scottsdale, Arizona. I hear they have at the hotel, they have like this super high-end shopping outside, and I think you can go surfing in the desert, which I'm super looking forward to. Anyway, Scottsdale, Arizona, August 15th to the 18th. So hurry up and register now to save a spot and make sure you get a room.
Take the guesswork out of making sure you're feeding your working dog correctly by using Kinetic Dog Food. Hit them up at kineticdogfood.com and look them up on the Instagrams at Kinetic Dog Food. Take all the guesswork out and do it right from the beginning.
We love Horizon Structures. Dude, this stuff is so awesome, man. You can get online, you can talk to them, you could build it you want from mild to wild. They'll come bring it to your place, set it down on your pad, hook up your power, hook up your water, and you can put dogs in it that day. If you don't believe me, check out some guys like Justin Rigney's got a great setup there. Ask him. Check him out, horizonstructures.com.
Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite. I am Ted Summers, as always, well, not always, but just today. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Eric Stambro's with me from Canton still. Eric, what's up, man?
I'm alive. That's good. Survived a pretty bad chemical reaction to a flea collar. People are, listen, here's the deal. And I put on my Instagram. I've used grabbed Seresto collars, I don't know, 300 dogs probably. I just grab them, put them on them. It's easier, especially if I have the dog for a short period of time. I get them, and then they go off to the police department then usually gets them on the pill or whatever. I kind of have a just irritation of the fact that you have to go to a vet's office to get those pills. It drives me fucking crazy. But so I get the collars while I go try to get some, and they're out of them. So I just grabbed, like an idiot, I grabbed the brand that was there that I've used one other time before without a problem. And it's hit or miss, even on the pills, the topical, the collars, everything. It's hit or miss on some dogs, whether it's going to work or not, or they're going to have a reaction to it. But I know I had a reaction to it, which I didn't really realize. I thought it was some food allergy that I had, and I figured out in the morning when I went back to the kennel that it was the collar. But a lady who's a medical professional reached out on Instagram, sent me a message, said, hey, because I think I said the Benadryl didn't really do anything that night. She said, take a Benadryl and add Pepsid with it. Said it's a cocktail that they use in hospitals all the time. And she said, if it's really bad, which it was, but she goes, try it. And if it's really bad, you'll have to get a steroid too. But dude, I'm telling you, I took that Pepsid and Benadryl together, and within short order, it started improving, like very quickly. Hours. Yeah. Like
no shit.
Couple hours. And then, yeah, it's been good.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Wow. All right.
Well, yeah.
Damn.
Never heard of it. But a couple of people messaged me. They said, yeah, man, I've had a reaction. The doctors told me to do that. There was somebody said a family member of theirs had some weird reaction to COVID where it was making him itchy all over, and they gave him that cocktail and it cleared it right up. So if you're one of those that get poison ivy real bad, you should try that. See if that works. I don't, but yeah, give it a shot if you have to.
I had the shots when I was a kid. I'm not going to go out and get it just to find out. So I had handler school start. What was today? Wednesday, Tuesday? Whatever today is. I had handler school start on Monday, so I got these guys here for quite a while with 5 handlers, and got some more dogs coming in from our vendor soon to backfill. So they're in not the next class, but the class after. So I'm like leapfrogging like as we go through. So I got a batch of dogs in and they're almost ready for the class. When this class ends, they'll be ready. So, and I've got like a 3 or 4 week break, and then so we jump through everything. But other than that, it's back to the freaking grind after going to Minneapolis and Florida and we have another HRD coming up after that. But and then of course we got hits, and we've got Blue Line obviously coming up in April, May.
Yeah,
May. When's Blue Line?
Yeah,
or
May,
no,
first week.
And they changed the name of it this year. Fucking Joe's gonna be pissed. I fucked up.
Hold the line.
It'll be all right. It's the one in Hold the line. That's right. It's the one in Pittsburgh. That's that one. So the pits and hits after that. But yeah. So
no, you tell me. You want to introduce him? Oh no, you want me to do it? That's right. Sorry. So you know, in the world of canine, a lot of us only know each other through Instagram, Facebook, social media, different types like that. We may never meet these people, or I think we maybe talk on the phone once in a while or message back and forth. But there are people in the business who you see doing good things out there, doing good work, and that stuff always sticks in your head. And those are people that we think about getting guests on here. So, but anyways, Scott, Callendar, thanks for coming on. From what I see, you guys are working, like got a lot of stuff going on. Let's tell everybody how you got to that point. What's your history?
All right. Well, I was kind of that nerdy kid that grew up wanting someday to be a police dog handler. You know, my stepdad was a dog handler, and I'll never forget like the first time I saw him with his dog and with a squad car and, you know, in uniform. I don't know what happened, but I just knew I had to do that someday. And I mean, when I was like 10 years old, I had my mom sew one of his canine patches onto my jacket, and you know, I grew up wanting to get into this, and eventually made it happen. So my dad, he was a dog handler in like the early '80s, probably, and it's kind of funny because when his last dog retired, it was a German Shepherd named Otto, and he came to me and he said, "Listen, you know, I don't know if I really want to keep Otto, but I know you're attached to him, so." He's going to be your dog. I want you to care for him. You're going to exercise him, feed him, you know, do all that stuff. Well, I took that to the extreme. And the next thing you know, I was like in 5th grade. And the next thing you know, I'm building obstacles and I'm doing like demos for the neighbor kids. And yeah. And that ended one day when I decided it'd be a good idea to throw a hockey shin pad on my little brother's forearm and tell him to take off running. Fortunately, there was no bite. Otto just kind of looked at him like, what the heck am I supposed to do? But obviously Dad found out, and I kind of put an end to that. But so I kind of grew up, you know, when I was real young, I remember going to trainings and demos. And when I was about 17, my mom and he got divorced, and he ended up getting married to another dog trainer up in the Minneapolis area. And they both knew I had a strong interest in it. And about that time, she was doing some training for training specifically detection dogs, narcotics and bomb dogs. And she had an injury to her shoulder. So I started off just kind of by helping her, because with her injury, she couldn't hold a leash. And so I helped her train these dogs up and learned just a ton, and basically was hooked. I started my police career in 1995 with the Mesa Police Department in Arizona. And our department, at that time, you had to have a significant amount of time on to move to canine. And so I did a variety of different specialty units within the department. In like the late 90s, I got involved in dog sports, particularly Schutzhund. Joined a dog club down here. And in, I think, 2000 or 2001, I took over as a training director of my club. And then I I finally got chosen for the canine unit with my department in 2008. And in 2012, I took over as one of the 2 trainers. And about 2015, I became the Southwest Regional Director for the National Police Canine Association. And I met Daryl Gaunt in, I think, 2008. And for whatever reason, we started off with a bromance and just kind of went from there. And I started teaching with him, I think, in 2017. And it's just kind of gone from there. And I mean, Daryl's, you guys have had him on the show, but he is just a plethora of knowledge. And not only that, but he is just a phenomenal person too. So I really appreciate all the opportunities he's given me to help him out and stuff.
Yeah, we like Daryl. Again, Well, I'm lost. I could have swore, dude. Last thing I saw from that dude, he was out with his grandkids, like in a camper, and saw
God,
snow
the
and colder
camper,
weather.
the
And
camper. Yeah, dude, we're doing a class in Murrieta, California this weekend, or later this week. And after I talked to you on the phone, Eric, I talked to him, and I thought we were going to be hoteling it, but he changed it up and he's bringing his camper, so I'm going to be shacking up with him in a hillbilly hotel for this seminar again.
see, I gotta go. I would be out. I can't do it. I know,
Yeah,
not a camper at all. So,
yeah,
so back when you
it's a
got in
tight fit,
9,
but
how many dogs were there?
I'm sorry, what?
Back when you got into K9, like how big was your unit and what was it like then?
It's really sad. So the department I work for is a pretty big department. We've got just under between like 800 and 1,000 cops, and we're fortunate enough that we have a full-time SWAT team. So the way our unit was set up is under tactical or SWAT, there was 3 full-time SWAT teams: the K9 unit, EOD, and the negotiators. And when I started, we had 8 dogs, and that maintained all the way up until I left. And unfortunately, now they're down to 4, which is
No.
absolutely insane for a city of our size. But like we were talking about before we started, I think that's unfortunately kind of the trend throughout the country. Canines are getting to be scary, and they're not really a priority for a lot of departments anymore, which is sad because it's such a priceless tool.
Yeah, we had 180 guys and had 9 dogs for a long time. They've settled on 7 dogs for years, and as far as I know, we'll maintain that for a long time. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot more scarier, quote unquote, things in these departments besides the dog. Did anything else get cut down like that?
Um, you know what? I don't really know. It's like every other department right now. They're struggling for people, and um, they can't fill the vacancies on patrol. And I mean, patrol is the backbone of every department. If they can't fill those positions, and they just don't have the bodies to allocate to some of these specialties, they got to make cuts somewhere.
What was
Looking
the
back, it's
so you get in there with your first dog? What was the like the training style back then? Because mine was all yank and crank for sure. Everybody back, I got in
yeah,
05. That was pretty similar.
yeah. It was. It's interesting because first of all, back then, canine, and pretty much all throughout my canine career, we were. I mean, I hate to say it like this, and I don't mean to sound cocky, but we were like the golden boys of the department. Everybody loved the dog unit, and we were very successful. We had, we did a lot of good work, and everybody really liked us, and the department really supported us. As far as training, the guy that was my trainer, uh, great guy. It started off when I first got there, kind of old school, like you said, a lot of like very set in the ways. Like we had our own in-house basic handler course, but it was literally the exact same curriculum as the Adlerhurst program, and which and actually it probably wasn't even the current Adlerhurst program. It was the like 1989 version, and so we worked real hard over the next couple of years to really kind of evolve that and bring it to some more modern methods. I, I had a lot of dog background when I came to the canine unit, and I remember I found out after I was out, because I'm still really good friends with my original sergeant, that I almost got kicked out because and you guys can probably relate with this, but back then the way that they would train a call off or a recall
Yeah.
was they'd throw the dog on a long line, send him out after a guy in a bite suit, and give that one command, and if he doesn't respond, he hits the end of the line, does a backflip, and well, from my sport background, I walked in, and the dog that I got was kind of a hand-me-down dog. Another handler took him through patrol school, and then didn't really work him on the streets very long. And I got him, and this dog was a freaking rock star if he had the long line on. Like every time he had the long line on, he would recall no problem. Take that long line off, yep, goodbye, he's going. And so on my own, I used some other methods, and my sergeant, phenomenal guy. I mean, one of the best leaders, best men I've ever known. But he called me in one day because it got to the point where I wasn't using the long line anymore, and he said, "Hey, some other people are getting upset with you because you're not using the long line." And I said, well, okay, what's the problem? You know, and he said, well, you know, you're not using our techniques to do this. And I said, you know what, John? I said, let me ask you a question. Out of the whole unit, right now, whose dog consistently calls off, long line or not? He's like, well, yours does. And I said, so what's the problem? You know, I said the problem that I perceived when I got this dog was he respected the equipment. He wasn't respecting me. So I had to use other methods, uh, and I got to give the guy credit because, you know, I was a newer handler at the time, and him, you know, being in charge of the unit with all these more senior people, you know, he asked me what my thoughts were on it, and I kind of broke it down and told him the techniques that I had used and my opinion on it. And he said, you know what? He's like, you're going to be the trainer of our unit someday. So I got to give him big props and a lot of respect for that, because he, I think a lot of sergeants in that situation would have been like, no, you're going to do it our way, period. But he was forward thinking enough to go, you know what, maybe this guy's on something. So, over the next couple of years, we really did evolve and started using some more diverse method instead of just the crank the dog into submission or, compulse him into submission or compliance. And we had a lot more success after that.
Did you start incorporating food in your OB?
You know what? I have used food in obedience. I don't remember a time that we really used food in obedience in the police department back then. Like, I've used it with younger dogs and new dogs, but I don't remember a time that we actually incorporated it at work.
Yeah, when I took over, everything was yank, 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 then go play ball for 5 minutes. And so when my first iteration of change was focus heel with a ball, or rewarding bunch of work, a bunch of stuff. And dude, the older guys in the area were like, what are you, sissy? You gotta, that's not how we do it. We make them, and then we play with them for 5 minutes in the corner of the field. That's what you do. So when you had to probably brought some of the sports stuff in there, how was that received?
You know what? Overall, it was received pretty well. There was one guy in particular that had some issue with it, but he ended up leaving the unit a couple years later. And the interesting thing is, like everything else, like, he never confronted me or talked to me about it face to face, but it was received pretty well. And like you were just talking about, I mean, we had some dogs that, if you did that old school, what I would call unfair methods, you were going to get bit. Like, I mean, we had some dogs that just weren't going to tolerate that kind of stuff, and we had guys getting bit. And my thing is, all dog training it all comes down to kind of the same concepts, right? We all put our own little twist on things or whatever, but it's a pretty basic. And I know a lot of trainers out there are going to kill me for saying this, but dog communication and dog behavior shaping is actually pretty basic stuff. We're the ones that make it complicated, and that's, like I said, my opinion, and some people will be upset about it. But if you're fair with a dog, even those sharper dogs, in my experience, if you're fair, they not only accept the correction, but they actually kind of expect it. They expect that from you as their leader. They expect to be held accountable, and really they want to know that they have a secure alpha. So mixing in some different methods, I think we had a lot of success. And I was, so when I first went to the unit, I'll never forget, I had one guy pull me aside and he said, hey, what do you want? What kind of dog do you want? So what do you mean? He goes, well, you can have a street dog or you can have a trials dog. One of the two. You can't have both. And I remember thinking, well, that's bullshit. No, I want a dog. I want my dog to run through fire, eat through a wall to find and engage man. But at the same time, I want to be able to control him. And I think that there's still some people out there that to this day that believe that a good solid police dog or street dog can't be well controlled, and they can be. I mean, you can have that. And to me, there's nothing like there's nothing better. I mean, that's what I get off on, is seeing, taking those really hard street monster dogs and harnessing and controlling that power, really. I mean, there's nothing like it, man. You guys know what I mean. I mean, when you get there and you finally click and you got that dog that as soon as you give him the go ahead, he's gonna he's going to go do God's work. But at the same time, if I need to recall him or I need to direct him, he's going to listen to me.
There's something refreshing about
it gives me goosebumps. There's nothing like it.
Both of those things. And every time one of my handlers gets a bite, the first thing I ask them, as I say, did you know it was going to happen? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, how did you know? And they're like, oh, because, they give me the rundown of why. And it usually has to fall back on training. And then the inevitable question is, were you afraid that something's going to go sideways? And most of the time they're like, not really. I mean, like, I was pretty confident in what was going on and all this other stuff. But there is because it's such a weird thing for me to hear, like, jibber jabber on fucking social media, and people like, well, you don't know he's going to engage. You don't know he's going to engage. And I'm like, man, I don't know about you, but I've been bit by enough social police dogs, and we've produced enough fucking, as you said, street sweepers. Eric and I both have, that, like, I'd say it's kind of like porn. You know it when you see it. Like, I'm like, this dog is going to bite somebody. And, it's always interesting. Several of our dogs have had bites within 30 days after coming out of school. And the handlers are like, yeah, I just knew, like, it was going to happen. And there's something refreshing about that. There's a certain sense of calmness. And even when I watch the body cam videos from those bites, the handlers are like, some of these guys, it's their first bites, and they're pretty calm-ish for, relative to what's going on, right? I've seen some shit shows. I have not my guys, thank God, not recently anyway.
Right.
And so, it's a, like you said, like, being able to control, like, that amount of power is an interesting, and it's a refreshing thing. It's a super empowering too. I see a lot of handlers, like you said, when they click. I have a very experienced handler that we have placed with when he wanted one of those dogs, and that's what he got. And they're finally getting into a groove, and they're going to find people and find stuff. They've already found a lot of stuff.
But, that's awesome.
So without a doubt.
And the thing is that old school mentality of, well, you can't have control of a street dog. That's not true. So the way I met Daryl, well, I first met Daryl at a conference, and like I said, we clicked for whatever reason and got to be friends. But he ran the LA County, SWAT Canine School, and at the time, we were biting a lot of SWAT cops. There's no way around it. We were biting, and we were using kind of Brad Smith's skid style of deployments with our SWAT team, and we bit a slew of SWAT cops in a pretty short period of time. And I thought, and this is shortly after I took over as one of the trainers, and I thought, we've got to do something better. There's something that we're missing. We got to find a better way. And so I went out to LA County, went through Daryl's class, and I don't know how familiar you guys are with their style, but I brought it back to our team. I gave them a presentation on it. I said, hey, let's go out to the live firehouse and let's run through some stuff. And the gist of it is that style is, when the dog's working, the team is staying still. The dog goes out and kind of leapfrogs ahead of the team the whole time. And once the dog's done working, then he gets called back to the handler. Dog gets hooked up, then the team takes that room. It's a very slow and deliberate, slow and methodical movement through a building, and it's all off leash. I've had people ask me, well, you don't use a long line for anything? Well, of course I do. Like, I always took a long line in with me. I mean, there might be a time where I need to send my dog into, I had a guy sitting on a toilet one time, so I hooked my dog up, sent him in, fished him out, right? But all of our, our deployment style in a building with SWAT was all off leash. And, you got to have, number one, you got to have that dog that is going to do his job. I mean, you guys know the drill. When SWAT shows up, this is already an elevated situation, right? And so you got to have that dog. Is going to go in. He's going to find man. He's going to engage man. He's going to stay in the fight on his own because it's going to take us a while to get up there. You got to have that really strong dog, but at the same time, I need to have control of him. And I presented it to our SWAT guys, and they actually loved it. And so we changed our tactics and went to that. And fast forward a couple of years, I started teaching it with Daryl, and things were very, very successful. And anyway,
that's good. SWAT guys love not getting bit.
Yeah, they do. Although, and I'm sure SWAT guys are the same all over the country too. That and it's funny. So I don't know if you guys saw on my social media, but both my both my sons are in the Army. They're both 75th Ranger Regiment, and my oldest son just got a dog. He just became a dog handler, and it's interesting because I get 4 or 5 phone calls a week from handlers throughout the country asking me for advice and stuff. And now it's kind of cool because now my son is one of them, and the way that they work with their dogs. And I know you guys have had some special operations guys on before, but their dogs have to be really neutral to the team. They're not only, their team guys aren't just directing the dogs, but they're physically handling them and physically moving them to room. And it's kind of cool to see. And even though we didn't deploy that way, we trained that way, because my feeling was, if my team could be going in and doing dynamic entry, my dog can be off leash and he has good enough uniform recognition that he ignores the team members, the way that we actually deploy, I'm never going to have a problem. It's kind of the whole thing of like, we train to 100 so we can deploy to 70, right? And but I don't know, it's cool to see.
That's cool. So,
Eric, you're just kind of staring at me.
Yeah. We're going to go and take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about, so we've talked about this numerous times on here, where like at my department in the beginning, the ecollar was just to use for the worst dogs, to teach the out and recall, even though they would try to do recall just with the ecollar and was wondered why the dog ran off. But and Ted's first e-collar experience, I think, was gas powered. Like you had to start it like a lawnmower.
It looked like the phone from Saved by the Bell, and it had one fucking button, and you had to change the thing out on the bottom to make it hot or not, or it had 3, right? And then everybody was like, "Put the black one on." So
Oh boy.
I still have that somewhere.
Yeah. So we get back. We're going to talk to Scott about some behavioral shaping using the e-collar and kind of how their training is advanced to where it's at now. So stick around. Check out the sponsors. We love it that you support our people, and we'll be right back.
All right. One of the largest conferences in the country, HITS Canine Training Conference. It's America's premier canine training seminar, packed to the brim with the world's best instructors, and me and Eric, all covering important topics. There is no better place to learn and no better place to network with other handlers, breeders, trainers, and vendors. HITS 2023 is being held in Scottsdale, Arizona. I hear they have at the hotel, they have like this super high-end shopping outside, and I think you can go surfing in the desert, which I'm super looking forward to. Anyway, Scottsdale, Arizona, August 15th to the 18th. So hurry up and register now to save a spot, and make sure you get a room. We'll see everybody there. Largest law enforcement training conference in the world. Tons of training classes, lots of training topics for everybody and everything. Hours included, and more network opportunities. Be sure to hit up Jeff Barrett at 863-529-5113, HITS K9, letter K number 9.net, and at HITS_K9, and all of your socials.
One of the best relationships we have in this podcast and in this industry is with the great people down at Kinetic Dog Food. The story of Kinetic Performance Dog Food is pretty simple. They wanted to make a better premium dog food for the dogs that need it the most. Their goal is to give every working and sporting dog a higher energy level, better performance, and better overall health through superior nutrition. So they formulated a line of food based on what they considered to be the optimal profile of a performance dog. They've done tons of research on this. This isn't their first rodeo. These guys know what they're doing. If you're a kennel, they will come to your kennel. They will see the problems that you have. They will check out what works for the dogs that you have. They're amazing people to work with. They drop ship a pallet right to you if you want. I know a lot of guys that use them. There's a bunch of different formulas on there, and 32K might not be for your dogs. Maybe the 26K works. They can adjust it. They'll give you the right ideas what to do in different parts of the year. Winter's different than summer. It's really a well-run, good dog food company, kineticdogfood.com. Be sure to check them out on social media too, man. They're amazing folks, kineticdogfood.com. So my entire time that I was a handler or a trainer in law enforcement, the cars at my department, in the departments that I trained, all had American aluminum accessory kennels in the cars. Different cars, man. Dodge Chargers, all Ford models, some Chevys, SUVs, cars, everything. We loved American aluminum accessories. It's a great product, a great company. They've been serving canine law enforcement community for over 20 years. If you check out their website, EZ, that's the letter Z, ezrideronline.com. They got testimonials. They got videos on how to. They got a list of everything they have. Just today, we made a post on the Working Dog Radio social media showing a dog that survived a really bad crash because of the American aluminum kennel in the back of the car. Check them out online, guys. EasyRiderOnline.com. Just let them do their thing, man. Whatever car you got for your work, your patrol car, get a hold of them, American Aluminum Accessories, and get the best in the business.
Next up comes training courses online from our friends down at Highland K9 Training, Jason and Aaron Ferguson. So in the post-Rona world, training budgets have been getting cut. People aren't going to be able to travel, whether it be instructors or they be canine handlers and supervisors going somewhere else for training. So Highland has announced a lot of online training courses. One of those that sticks out to me is their police supervisor canine course. And it's no secret that one of the problems with canine tends to be some of the supervision issues. This course is specifically designed for administrators and covers utilization as well as liability and FLSA issues. The course can be taken at your convenience, and you'll receive a certificate of completion at the end. When you go to Tactical Police Canine Training, that's letter K number 9, training.com, and use the discount code WDR30, you'll get 30% off of that course.
All right, we're back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite with Scott Callendar from Paraclete K9. He works with Daryl. He doesn't own the company. We made that very clear. And Daryl's listening to this. We owe you some Whataburger. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he'll definitely be listening. He's going to give me shit relentlessly for that.
Oh, Eric said it, not you.
Yeah.
Let him give Eric
That's
shit.
that's
my Eric's fault. Blame it, Eric.
Yeah.
So before we left, we were
I have chemical brain.
Fucking wearing dog collars. You're wearing flea collars. Don't do that. So before we left, we were talking a little bit about like how we got to this part of the conversation, and we were talking about. Eric said, the e-collars Eric's told the story before. They had one e-collar that was the e-collar for the entire unit, and when you had a dog, and it was always for outs or some bullshit. And they were like, "I'll get the e-collar," right? Like when you were a kid, like go get the stick. And that was like, "Oh, we're going to show this dog now. We're going to fucking make him." And thankfully, we have made it to 2023. I know there are people that still do that, but like good trainers don't do that shit anymore.
Yeah.
So one of the things you guys do at Paraclete is an e-collar course, but with shaping the e-collar, shaping behaviors with the e-collar. So let's talk a little bit about that. And one thing that I want to hit on because Eric does a version of this also in his e-collar without conflict class that he's done, I don't know, a bunch of already. And I want to hit on like how you can apply this to, because you guys both see handlers that, like dogs you didn't train, right? And handlers you didn't train, and you're there for 3 days. And so we have to kind of like instill some sort of something to these people within 3 days. And they may have been using the e-collar incorrectly. There may be a damaged relationship with them and the dog already. And it's a fucking shit show, or it can be. So we'll leave off with that. But let's talk a little bit about what that is first, and then we'll move through that whole process.
Sure. So first of all, like our class, it's titled Behavior Shaping with E-collar. And I've kind of argued with Daryl at times, like I almost wish we would change the title, because it's really more of a behavior shaping class than it is a true e-collar class. I mean, we use the e-collar and we introduce the e-collar and we show handlers how to use it, but the nuts and bolts of the class is really learning how to communicate with your dog. And I said it before, and I know some trainers out there will give me a hard time for saying this, but dog behavior shaping or dog training is actually a pretty simple process. Dogs are very black and white animals, and we're the ones that make it confusing, or we overanalyze things. And the biggest things are having that clear communication. The dog needs to understand what you expect of him. He needs to understand, what's the consequences for if he doesn't, if he's disobedient. And he also needs to understand what the reward is if he's obedient. And once you and then let me back up. The next biggest word, in my opinion, for dog training is consistency. Like you've got to be consistent all the time. And in my opinion, that's the biggest thing that I see with most handlers. Most handlers are doing a really good job when they're in the training field. and it's training time. But then they go out on a real deployment, and like let's say they're in the stack and their dog gets up out of a down, he breaks from his down. Well, how many handlers in the real world do you know that are going to actually in the moment mark that behavior and correct it out on the field? And don't get me wrong, guys, like I did these things myself, I made these mistakes myself, but and what happens with that over time, the dog starts to learn, okay, well, I have to be obedient here, but when we're out with all these other guys and bulletproof vests and helmets and everything else, I can fuck around, I can get away with it because dad never holds me accountable, right? Same thing. And I used to be really bad about this. We go home, our off duty time, and you give your dog a command. Well, if he blows you off and you don't follow it up with a correction, well, what did you just tell him? You just told him that, okay, rules only apply here. And the dogs that we use are pretty strong dogs. I mean, they're going to test us constantly because it's in their nature to. I mean, they have a genetic and a need to have an alpha, have a leader. And I stole this line from Daryl, but there's a saying that says nature abhors a vacuum. Well, if a dog doesn't sense that he has a strong leader, a strong dog is going to step up and be that leader. So the lack of consistency is where I see that most handlers have problems. With the e-collar, the thing that I like about it with this behavior shaping is it's because it's not a bigger stick, it's not a magic collar, it's just another tool that we have available to us. But I will say that it's probably the easiest tool for us to be consistent with. We can get like the same level correction every single time. And you guys know, like, how hard is it to explain to a new handler, hey, I want your timing to be perfect, I want your corrections to be consistent, I want all this and I want that. It's kind of like a clicker for marketing, right? Like I can tell a handler, hey, I want you to mark this behavior. I want you to say yes as soon as his ass hits the ground when you tell him to sit. And I want you to say yes the same way. I want you to say yes with the same, voice, the same inflection. I want it to be consistent all the time. Well, for some reason, as human beings, we have a problem with that. But I can throw a dumb little clicker in somebody's hand and tell them, hey, as soon as, tell your dog to sit, as soon as his ass hits the ground, click that, click the button. And for some reason, we as humans can do that, right? I mean, you guys agree with me?
Oh, yeah.
It's very simple for us.
Mhm.
And so the e-collar, it's not, and and I'll tell you, like, I think Eric, you were talking about it when I started. Things were the e-collar techniques were very heavy-handed, like we were talking about. And I personally, because of my sport background, I was opposed to it. Like I felt like an e-collar was a crutch, because in the sport world you can't wear collars like that. You go out on the trial field to try to title your dog, you can't have anything but a choke collar first aid around the dog. You can't have anything else. Well, KMPB, you can't have anything on the dog. So, I felt like it was a crutch for a long time, and God, I don't even know what year it was, but I actually I brought Daryl out for our unit and went through his class. And first of all the stuff that I had learned in sport dog training that, and you guys can relate with this as cops, we want the result. Like we want this dog to go out and do his job, and we want the result. And a lot of times I feel like a lot of our basic dog training kind of goes out the window because we're so focused on the result and the what the dog's going to do out in the streets that we forget the basics. And it's all about the the basic onesies and twosies, little stuff. I know there's a quote out there, something like amateurs want to train for the cool shit, professionals train in the basics, right? And um, in my experience with law enforcement, we kind of get so focused on all the cool stuff that we forget some of the basics. And so when I went through Daryl's class, I even told him afterward, like, I didn't really learn new stuff, but this was a good reminder of the basics that I had let go because I'm so focused on, like door pops or, you know, like flashbang inoculation or, all the cool shit, right? That I had kind of forgotten about the basic stuff. So with our class, we start off and we teach, we talk about learning to communicate with your dog. First of all, we obviously talk about drives, what motivates the dog, how they communicate with each other. Because, for us to be able to effectively communicate with our dogs, we need to understand how dogs communicate with each other. We need to understand what they respond to. And then we start talking about the behavior shaping of it. And, I keep saying this, but it's really, really simple and cut and dry. When you give your dog a known command, a dog, the command the dog knows, he's already been imprinted. He understands the word sit means to put his butt on the ground. When you get to that point, it's really as easy as you give the dog a command. If he's obedient, you mark it and he gets rewarded. If he's disobedient, you mark it and he gets corrected. And we incorporate the ecollar into that because, like I said, it's a very consistent tool that we can use for that.
You're hitting on something that is one of my fucking pet peeves with handlers, and it bugs Eric too. The need for handlers to consistently talk to dogs like it fucking matters.
Yeah.
And like today, I was talking to my handlers today. They're in what day is it? Doesn't matter. Whatever. It's one of the first 2 or 3 days in class. And I'm telling them one command, one behavior. He heard you the first time. Look how big his fucking ears are. And and I constantly tell handlers, and I do this with pet people and I do this with canine handlers, but I try and incorporate a ton of context into a lot of these commands. Right. So, and I tell them, I was like, I'm not going to talk about pet shit, but from the law enforcement side, I said, I need you communicating with humans, like whether it's suspects or backup people or radio or something. I don't need you talking to the fucking dog. If you tell him to down, he stays down.
Yeah.
And he stays there until we tell him to do something else. And
absolutely.
The constant talking to dogs like good boy, and the constant tracking's another one. Dudes are tracking. They're constantly telling the dog to track. They're constantly, and they don't know that they do it. So I watch body cams from people that are my handlers, but they're walking a car, and in 2 minutes on a sniff, they say their search command like 36 times. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like how, and they don't like, well, I don't even realize that I'm doing it. I'm like, I can tell, like, shut up. And so it's definitely one of those things that, and in that behavior chain that you were explaining, right? So you give a command, you get compliance, you get rewarded, or we do a bridge command, whatever else, or we get non-compliance. And I tell handlers, I'm like, if he's blowing you off, you need to make sure that one, he heard you, and that he knows that that he heard you, and then we can correct him. Because a lot of these dogs, like, and Eric's talked about it too, like when dogs get super deep and drive, and all of a sudden, like, auditory exclusion is a thing, right? And then all of a sudden, we're fucking smoking them, and they're like,
their eyes roll back, and they're like a shark in a feeding frenzy. Yeah.
And then we're like, all right, then there's a whole drive capping conversation that needs to happen and some other things. But I'm like, you gotta, like, the corrections got to be fair, because you mentioned, like, we got some dogs right now. Fucking Snoopy is this dog that we got that came in, that he's one of those dogs that he'll take a correction, but if it's not timed well, or if it's not in line with the infraction, you're going to end up wearing him.
Yeah. If it's not fair.
It's just what it is. Well,
and I actually really respect the heck out of those dogs. Like I do. Like hey, would you be any different? If some guy was, unfairly corrected, you were smacking you upside the head. Like I had a conversation with a handler one time, and I was like, hey, how would you feel if you had a partner and you're driving down the street, and every 15, 20 minutes for no reason known to you, he just sucker punched you? How would you feel? Of course, sooner or later, you're going to fight back. You're going to let him know, So, and I'm so glad you touched on the talking to the dogs, because every class that we do, it's funny because we want to make it very simple. Dogs, like I said, dogs are very black and white. They're very simple animals when it comes to that. And we're the ones that overcomplicate it. Like I'm sure you guys have heard, the old school, like verbal out, like hey, bad guy, stand still, hands up, fooey los, and it's like, okay, what? No, one word. Los, what plots, house, I don't care what it is, one word. He needs to respond to that one word. And if he hears it in the middle of all your commands, because I've been in that situation. I was in a pretty hairy situation where my dog was getting pretty severely hurt by a guy, and I needed him to let go and come back. And is he gonna hear that amongst, if you mix into your training regimen, hey, bad guy, stand still, hands up, all this other stuff, he's not going to hear it when he needs to, and he's not going to understand. But if you tell him, if you teach him and you're consistent with it with one word, and so every class I tell them, I have one or two people, one or two handlers that I'll have to pull them aside and I say, listen, okay, here's what we're going to do. because it starts off, we start off very basic. We literally start with having them take one step forward and telling their dog to sit. And we also use the e-collars. It's not primarily a correction tool in the methods we teach. It's more for communication. You're using a very low level stimulation. For example, on what I was talking about, like we'll tell them, okay, you're going to take one step, tell them to sit. Once the handler tells them to sit, we're giving a very low level stimulus until the dog's ass goes on the ground. As soon as he goes on the ground, the e-collar stimulus comes off. They mark it with their marker and they reward him, right? And as soon as they reward him, it's usually with a tug or a ball. I tell them, okay, well, now we're going to do the first verbal out of the class. And this is where things get spicy, because that's where handlers look at you and go, yeah, that's not going to happen, right? And I tell them, okay, well, here's the deal. We're going to do, because in the beginning we run the remotes for them so they can focus on what they need to, right? And so I'll tell them, I want you to give him his out command. Give him an appropriate amount of time. Wait till he's making the decision not to let go. And you're going to mark it with FUI, no, whatever your marker is, and I'm going to correct him with the e-collar. And every single class will get guys that, Los, no out. FUI, Los, 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 Los. And I'll be like, whoa, time out, stop. You have 3 words. 3 words, that's it. I want you to say Los, and then if he doesn't Los, you're going to say FUI. I'm going to correct him. And when he lets go, you're going to mark it with a yes or whatever his command is, and you're going to give it right back to him, right? And it's like I keep saying, we're the ones that overcomplicate things, because, and I've been there. We've all been there. We've all gotten that habit of repeating commands, or, we talk about this too. Okay, how many, on which Los is your dog supposed to let go? The first one or the 15th? Because you guys know what I'm talking about. Handlers get out there, they tell their dog to let go on a verbal out, and it turns into Los, FUI, Los, 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 here, FUI, Los, here. Well, what you're doing. It's a cycle you get in, and it's just compounding the problem. Where, the way we teach is one command. That's it. You tell him Los one time. If he doesn't let go, it's very simple. Then you're going to tell him with a verbal marker that he's wrong, FUI, and then you're going to correct him physically. Because dogs, have you guys heard the term verbal correction with your handlers? Yeah. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, believe it or not, but in my world, there is no such thing as a verbal correction, right? Like, dogs don't, if I tell him FUI and I don't give him some kind of, it doesn't have to be getting cracked over the head with a stick. It doesn't have to be cranked down with a pinch collar. It's all relative, right? Like, it's kind of, there's misdemeanors and there's felonies, right? So, even at home, if I tell my dog to sit and he doesn't sit, I'd mark it with a FUI, and I'll give him like a little ear flick, or just give him a little Cesar Millan, a little pinch or whatever. And, in my experience, if you can maintain that consistency all the time, so as soon as he hears that word FUI, he knows 2 things. 1, he messed up. And 2, the correction's coming afterwards, right? Because how many, and the proof is in the pudding. Like I tell guys afterward, like, hey, when you say FUI and your dog does what he's supposed to do, that tells me he knew. Like, he intentionally just blew you off. He knew what that word meant. He just chose to be disobedient. And now that you told him FUI, his word for no one, and a lot of different people use different words, but if he becomes compliant as soon as you use the word FUI, that means he knew what he was doing wrong, right? But you still need to follow up on that correction, even if it's a smaller correction, just to remind you, hey, there's still value in that word.
When you're saying that it's, things are very black and white, and that's why I try and make it super simple for both pet clients and for law enforcement guys for 2 different reasons. But and things need to be very black and white and very clear. And what you're describing, when I start talking with handlers about corrections, I said, when we use, because all of our dogs are trained, they're all marker trained, or I'm doing little air quotes if you're listening to this and not watching it. They're marker trained, so they have a yes command. So we make announcements at the door, and random police canine, make yourself known, dog find you by blah blah whatever. And we do that. Dog has to be quiet. There is no warning for making noise. They make any noise, they get corrected immediately. And it's not like anything crazy, but it's positive punishment. It's perceived as consistent and serious. The other side is that we don't tell them to bite. We don't tell them to search. We really just say yes. And the dogs take off and they rip into the building and they're doing their job and whatever else. And so I tell handlers, I said, your no has to have weight, and the weight,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
weight, the dog has no, the weight has no, because we trained him, but you got to understand what that means. And I have to beat it into my handlers. And I tell them no is positive punishment. And without getting deep into that with those guys, I say it has to be consistent and it has to be perceived as serious. To this day, my half blind fucking arthritic 13-year-old Malinois, if I say no, he knows that hell is coming.
Yes.
And it's 100% coming. And same thing, I can get a fucking clicker out with him, and he knows that if I click, I better pay him. If he doesn't, he'll still try and bite me. So it's one of those things. It has to be perceived as consistent, and it has to be perceived as serious. And that the consistency is where handlers fall off.
It's absolutely, and we've all done it. I mean, listen, guys, everything that I teach, either stole some from somebody else, or I learned the absolute hard way. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes, but the biggest mistake that we all make is that lack of consistency. And, that's why I like about the ecollar, because, I mentioned before, right? Like when you're on a live deployment and your dog does something disobedient, especially in today's day and age. And we had a case in Peoria, Arizona, probably 5-6 years ago with this handler. They were going to a house for a felony warrant, just like a knock and talk to see if he's there. And some neighbors are filming across the street with their camera phone. Well, this dog and it wasn't even bad. He wasn't looking super out of control, and you can't hear but it looks like the dog breaks it down and kind of lunges on the line. So the handler cranks him back. It looks like he tells him to down again. The dog doesn't. So he gives him like a little leash correction, and then kind of gives him this half-assed weak suck side kick, like just kind of kicks him, in the ribs. But I mean, really weak. But it was all over the media, right? Okay, well now let's say you are proficient with an e-collar. Same thing happens. You're on a live deployment, live at 5, cameras all over the place, and your dog does something disobedient. How much better does it look to just mark it with FUI or no and reach up to your vest and push that button and get the result? It's such when used correctly. And let me say this, and you guys know this, it's, in my opinion, probably it is probably the most abused piece of dog equipment in the world, but it is also one of the most effective. Because if you really know what you're doing and you can finesse that, the results that you can get are second to none. And the way we teach it, because some people are afraid of, like, I do some pet training on the side too, and I had a client that was interested in using an e-collar, but his concern was shocking his dog. And I said, well, here, put this in your hand and feel it, and you tell me if you think this is inhumane, right? And one of the first things that we do in our e-collar classes, we find each dog's lowest titration level, so the very lowest stimulus that we can see that they feel. And on a dog trip, for example, usually looking at like 10 or 11 with most dogs in the beginning, and
out of 127.
Exactly. And 10 or 11, I can barely, if I really concentrate, I can feel it. And honestly, I don't know how the dogs are feeling it, but I can barely feel it. And, that's the level that we will start with, and we'll use that for the communication, for the low level stimulus, kind of that, because it's a whole negative reinforcement thing, right? Like they're out of position, so they get like a level 10 or 11, whatever their level is, until they're in proper position, then the pressure goes away. We also use it to teach like a send out or even directionals. The dog, we'll show the dog that, hey, when I'm in this position, I give you this command. You are supposed to run in a straight line as far as you can until I come out, until you feel that pressure go away on your neck. And there's so many different uses for it, but I mean, you guys know that. But the correction side of things, it's interesting because every class that we do, we start off with that level. And like you mentioned before, Ted, most of the dogs we're seeing have had some kind of exposure with e-collar. And most of them we're finding pretty high levels, especially on the correction side. But by the end of the 3 days, that number has reduced significantly, because once they understand how you're communicating with them, and once they understand what's expected of them, it doesn't take as much of that compulsion or that stimulant, that electricity to get their compliance. And it's, I mean, for me, it's cool. And I'm kind of glad that I got an opportunity to be a part of this, because it's very, very rewarding. I had a guy in Williston, North Dakota, and day one, like I told you, we started off with the basic obedience stuff. And I told him, all right, we're doing your first verbal out. And he looked at me and he just kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And I'm like, dude, trust me, we'll work it out. If it doesn't happen, we're going to work it out. And sure enough, after he got corrected one time, and after that dog was spitting it out, leaving the tug on the ground. Handler could go pick it up. And he kind of looked at me and laughed. He's like, oh, just wait. He's like, when he gets on a bite suit, you're going to see a totally different dog. And I was kind of cocky at the moment. I can be that way sometimes, but it's like, no, I think you're going to see a different dog. And what really makes me happy is this guy just last week sent me a bunch of videos, and it's been 2 years since he went through a class, and he still has a phenomenal verbal out. He can stand back from the decoy, one command, dog spits, recalls him, comes right back to a nice position. And the thing that sets that guy apart is he's staying consistent. Like he's continuing it. Because you guys do seminars. Any dog trainer can come in from the outside and over 3 days can, quote unquote, solve your problems or make your dog look better for that 3 days. But what happens when that trainer leaves, right? I mean, it's on the handlers to stay consistent and apply that throughout, because I mean, we can't be there all the time. I'd love to be able to be there all the time, but ideally my goal is I want to show the handlers, give them the knowledge that they don't need me anymore. They don't need a trainer to come anymore. I want them to really understand and have that knowledge so they can train their own dogs from now on. Because, I mean, let's face it, as professional dog handlers, we're all trainers, right? And that's kind of the way it should be. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm traveling around teaching my ecollar classes, and the concepts are very similar to yours, except I'm using tone or vibrate depending on the collar as the no or fooey. Okay. It's a negative marker prior to the correction. And I like to do it because it takes then the handler completely out of it. And it does help solve the problems of the dogs that know the correction came from the handler and then turn and bite the handler. So, there's some poisoned dogs like that. But so at my classes, there's 15 working dogs in each class. And I have really good results. Like we make a lot of good changes out of with people. And of the 15 dogs, after I leave, I might hear from 3 or 4 of the handlers that they're continuing with it, and it's great. One guy told me he completely changed everything in the way he's doing his system, and it's really cleared up a lot of problems with his dog. One guy does pet dogs. He added into that realm. Then there was an agency or big training group I was at not too long ago that I heard on the one dog we cleared up so many problems, man. It was such a great time. And they're like, yeah, screw that after I left. And now they're back to the same problems.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I showed you, like I actually showed you live in front of you how it worked. And so yeah, it's weird. It does take some consistency. They got to buy in. They got to understand it. I like the tone because then it takes away the no fooey. It does seem to work pretty good. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and take our second break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what Paraclete's got going on these days and maybe touch a little bit on some of the West Coast
drama,
legal shenanigans, drama going on.
Christ.
Ted will have an update from today. Some stuff that happened today, but stick around, guys. Check the show notes for the discount codes if you fast forward through the commercials. But again, we appreciate you checking out our sponsors. We'll be right back.
All right. We love the Perkinsons down in North Carolina at Highland Canine Training. They are great people, great trainers. They got a good business model. They're awesome folks. We've been with them for a long time. They're also super smart, and they understand that a lot of agencies are struggling to have manpower, so they're not sending people away for training. You guys have been there. You know, you put in, denied, lack of manpower. So they've created an online course section of their website, tacticalpoliceK9training.com. You get on there under training, the online course. But here's the best thing is they offer a supervisor, canine supervisor course, which we know a lot of police canine supervisors don't get to go to training. They don't know as much as they should. Right here online, the course discusses topics such as proper selection of dogs and handlers, proper deployment, effective allocation and utilization, as well as liability and the FLSA issues, which we know is where all the legal stuff comes from, interdepartmental. The course can be taken at your convenience, and you will receive a certificate of completion at the end. They're offering an amazing discount, guys. 30% off using the discount code WDR30. It's a no-brainer. If you're a police supervisor and you guys have manpower issues and you can't go, get on tacticalpoliceK9training.com under the training tab. Get on that supervisor's course, man. I'm telling you, it's a smart decision.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break for just a second and talk about Dogtra, one of our favorite sponsors. Dogtra's been committed for over 20 years to crafting dog training e-collars to perfect and precise fit and finish, intuitive design, and accountable performance. The Dogtra 1900S e-collar is one of my favorites, and it demonstrates what they strive for, an ultimate dog training tool that is durable, dependable, and designed for the most demanding conditions, which I can attest to because I tear stuff up frequently. My favorite is the 1900S Black and the 1900S Hands-Free, which I use all the time. Check it out at dogtra.com. Be sure to use the discount code WDR10 for 10% off any single item over $200. That includes the 1900 and the 1900 Black.
It's no secret that we love Ray Allen Canine Equipment. We use their products every single day. The mission statement says it all: to be a world leader in quality and innovation of professional canine equipment for police, military, Schutzhund, and ring sport, to exceed our customers' expectations and deliver on time every time at a fair price. We full-heartedly believe they've held to that, since it is our go-to one-stop shop for everything canine. Not everything canine alone, guys, dogs in general. If you train dogs, if you have a dog, everything you need for dog or canine, check out Ray Allen Canine Manufacturing, rayallencanine.com. Use the discount code WDR10 for 10% off.
Super excited to have American Aluminum Accessories on board with us here at the podcast. These guys manufacture a wide variety of products, from high-quality cam locker toolboxes to an extensive line of products designed to meet the ever-changing needs of the law enforcement community. Around 1992, due to the demand for safe and secure transport for a local law enforcement agency's canine unit, they introduced the very first in-vehicle Easy Rider canine container. So it was basically what we now call just our inserts. They have continuously grown and expanded the products, catering to the needs and the wants of their valued customers and high-profile clientele, and catering specifically to law enforcement. Over the years, as the needs have changed for law enforcement, they've evolved and expanded the products to include inmate transport systems, the canine training aids, which I use quite a bit of, canine inserts. Every one of my guys has one of those things. And if you're not even have to be in law enforcement, I have several friends that are civilians that work lots of dogs that have the inserts put into their cars too. So if you got one that fits, you can do it. They also do contraband and animal control systems, just to name a few. So be sure to hit them up. The website is Easy Rider Online. So that's the letter E, the letter Z as in zebra, rideronline.com. If you're looking for them on Instagram and Facebook, it's American Aluminum Accessories. Feel free to hit them up there too.
So our first and oldest sponsor that's been with us from the beginning is Arno out at ALM, out there in Las Vegas area. Arno is a great dude. He makes great stuff for police work and sport work, suits, tugs. I'm telling you right now, his tugs are the best in the business. You can't get any better. Multiple colors. I buy boxes of them from him, give them out to everybody. I've got a bite suit from him. Love it. I've had it for a little over 3 years, and it's holding up like a champ. Ted's got a suit that he's had forever from ALM. We wouldn't go anywhere else, man. We love it. Arno is such a good dude. His ALMK9equipment.com is the website. Get on there. He's got pre-made suits. He can do custom suits based on your measurements. He's got stuff already made up. If you kind of get a kind of generic large size, maybe for everybody, the colors he has, man, is really cool. He can put a lot of stuff on those suits. Check them out, almk9equipment.com, and use the discount code WD Radio for 10% off.
Running a kennel is one of those things that I always worry about is cleanliness and safety of dogs. And it seems like it's an ever changing issue being able to house dogs and move things around, everything else. So the guys at Horizon Structure make this as easy as possible. Literally the only thing you have to do is have water and power hookups, and they deliver it, and you can put dogs in that day. And comes on a trailer. They just drop it off. You plug it in, put dogs in it, and you're ready to rock. You keep them clean, you keep them safe, you keep them cool in the summer and warm in the wintertime. And it's completely custom. You can go complete mild to wild. I've seen some that were stainless steel all the way from top to bottom on the inside. And then I've seen some for a bulldog breeder that, had smaller gates because those things can't jump. So if you reach out to them, they're sitting there waiting for you to call and help you through the custom design process. They have everything from 2 dog ones up to, I want to say like 18 or 20. It's a lot you can put a lot of dogs, indoor, outdoor runs. So anything you've ever dreamed of, they've got it, have done it, or can do it. So they've taken all the guesswork out of building it. Everything is pre-done to your specifications, and it's assembled, dropped off, boom, you're ready to rock. Things are amazing. Rigney has one. We've had him on the show a couple of times. Go check out his Instagram, and you can see he's posted it up there before. Go look Horizon up at Horizon Structures, spelled out. On the internet, it's horizonstructures.com, and you're going to look for the link in there that says commercial dog kennels, or give them a call, 888-447-4337. They'd love to talk to you and get you started on the way.
All right, we're back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite. Back with Scott Callendar from California and Paraclete K9. We had just been talking about shaping behaviors with e-collars and using it as a communication tool more than anything else. There's been quite a bit of shit going on social media on the pet side with using pet dog e-collars and whatever else. We're not even going to touch on it. I don't give a shit about that, dude. Those people. They can go get bent. I don't care. I refuse to talk to people that don't understand all 4 quadrants. I just don't. I'm sorry. I don't fucking care.
Well, there's still people in our industry that feel that way, right?
They can go get fucked too. And you know what? Most of them have been bit, and Victoria Stillwell's one. We're not going to cut this shit out. She still owes me fucking money as it is. So she got bit by a fucking dog, and I actually know the dog that bit her. It's dead now, but you know what? Good on him. It was actually a female dog, but fuck her too. And she's been notably silent. But Victoria, if you're still listening to this, you still owe me money for the hits ticket, so you can go get Ben also. So in that respect, we've been talking about like shaping the behaviors and how we use the e-collars, and this isn't really like the best venue to talk about it, but like going to Paraclete or one of Eric's classes, definitely will clean that up. But I think with the big takeaway that I want handlers listening to this is consistency. I joke with a lot of handlers at some HRDs and some of the other seminars I do, where I'm like, motherfucker, I know you're consistent. Look at your ass. You're in the gym 6 days a week. I can tell you're consistent. Yep. Like, consistency. And they're like, they kind of sheepishly look at me like, yeah, I know. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, then you understand. Like, if you skip a workout, you get all fucking bent out about it, right? Like, yeah. I'm like, well, what do you want me to tell you? So that usually, and those are the guys that are usually the easiest to get through to, because they're like, okay, I get it. I'm like, all right, well, you know, and it's not like, and I tell them, you don't have to go to it's not like going to the gym for like an hour and a half. Like, I know you guys, like those dudes do. Like, the dog needs like 10 minutes a day. It's not like huge. Like, it's not something, it's not like groundbreaking time. Like, you don't got to schedule it out of your fucking day. So in fact, it's probably in that 30 minutes you get before and after the shift where they have to pay you.
Exactly. It's in everything. It's at home. Like I when I came home, I would pull my car into the garage. I would close my garage door. I'd get my dog out, and I would walk into the house, and I would make him sit outside the door leading from the garage to the house every night on the way in. Well, if he didn't sit one night, which happened on occasion, I would stay consistent. And he'd get like a little flick. And that's one thing I want to say about the e-collar too is, the way we teach is, hey, it's not just the e-collar. Like, this method, if you're going to communicate with your dog and use these methods, you have to do it all the time. And because we've all been in that situation where maybe our dog doesn't have the collar on, it's our day off or whatever. Well, if you don't have the e-collar on, then you still need to correct him. Like, you need to do something to correct him, and because once the dogs understand that, they really do. They expect you to correct them. And so I got to tell you guys this story really quick, because you were talking about pets and stuff. Like, I don't know about you guys, but my least favorite people to train as new dog handlers are the quote unquote dog people, right? Like the people that grew up with dogs and, so I had this guy, an awesome guy, new dog going through our basic, and it was our in-service night. So the whole unit's there and we're doing building searches, and he comes up and his dog starts getting vocal on announcements. So he sends his dog into the building, and I said, hey, Muddy, next time you come up, I want you to put a pinch collar on your dog because we're going to correct this problem before it gets worse. We're going to work on this vocal problem. So a couple hours later, it's his turn again. He comes up, and thank God my boss was there to witness this because this is shit you guys not. This really happened. So he comes up, puts his dog in surveillance position on the door, starts giving announcements. I look down, and there's no pinch collar on the dog. Like, hey, I told you to bring a pinch. What's going on? He's like, oh no, Scott, we're going a different route. Like, what do you mean we're going a different route? He goes, well, we had a talk in the parking lot and we're going to go a different route. Like, and so now I'm kind of pissed. I'm like, hey, who are you talking to that's like undermining my ideas? Like, what? And he's like, no, man, we had a talk. It's good. And I'm like, no, who did you talk to and what route are you going to go? I mean, I'm the one that's responsible for training you. I want to know what's up, And he's like, no, me and my dog, we had a talk out by the car. Now, if I were to talk to you guys and I said, hey, I just took my dog behind the car and had a talk with him, what does that mean?
Whooped his ass.
Exactly. So then I'm like, you just whooped your dog's ass for what? He goes, no, we had a talk. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, we talked about it and we're not going to bark at the door anymore. Like, are you shitting me? You had a heart to heart with your dog. And then fast forward a couple years later, I got a guy that came to our unit that he came to me. He's like, you know what? He goes, Scott, I've never owned a dog in my life. I don't know anything about dogs. And I don't know anything. And I'll tell you what, he ended up being a phenomenal trainer. Well, he is a trainer now. Excellent handler because he didn't, it's kind of like firearms, when how you talk to a firearms instructor and they'd rather teach somebody that's never handled a gun before than someone that's developed bad habits, right? Oh, sorry, I just had to tell you that story because it's still to this day. And I just saw this guy at the coffee shop the other day, and I still give a shit about that. Like, you had to talk with your dog behind the car and told him he couldn't bark at the door anymore. He has no clue what you're saying, no clue. But the consistency thing is really, in my opinion, that's what it comes down to on everything. You got to be consistent with these dogs because that's what they respect and that's what they know.
So what all kinds of stuff are you guys at Paraclete doing? What do you got going on?
You know what? It's been so after COVID was done, we were really busy. We were doing a lot because everybody was kind of shut down for COVID, and so probably spring of 2021 until mid last year, we were pretty busy doing a lot of seminars. This year, and Daryl and I both have had some other stuff going on in our personal lives, so we haven't had as much going on. We've got a class starting on Thursday in Marietta, California, on behavior shaping with ecollar class, and that's a really good group out there. And Marietta's trainer Aaron Harwick is just a phenomenal guy, and he's one of those people that I really respect in this industry because let's face it, we all have type A personalities and we all think we're the experts, but Aaron is one of those exceptions that like just soaks it all in, and he wants to learn as much as possible and provide the best training for his guys. And so looking forward to getting out and training with him on Thursday. And then I think Daryl said we've got something maybe in Pennsylvania, and I think Idaho coming up later on the spring and summer. But it's kind of slowed down a little bit right now.
Is it, are you guys offering, what subject matters are you guys offering?
So we offer, number one, the behavior shaping with ecollar that I've already talked about. We also, because Daryl and I have a pretty significant SWAT canine integration, and Daryl was the author of one of the two. Romeo and Daryl started the LA County canine tactical course, which our course is literally that same exact curriculum. The only difference is you don't get to rappel out of a helicopter in our class because we don't have a If you got one, we'll be happy to do it. But we don't have enough. We don't have the resources to bring our own helicopter with us. But everything else is the same. So kind of our bread and butter is that SWAT integration. and the behavior shaping with ecollar. We also have done some problem solving classes. My background, I didn't really talk about it before, but and some of the training I've done on my own has been more revolved around scenario based training, and I wish we had more time to do that. You guys, I know you guys do a phenomenal job with that, and I gotta. So Daryl and I have a rule that if we talk shit about each other, then we tell each other, right?
Mhm.
So I got to tell you, I've talked shit about you guys.
Oh, sweet.
Look at the face. No, so in 2015, Dick Van Leenen from the Netherlands is a pretty good friend, and he and I know you guys said that I was from California earlier. I'm actually in Arizona, and Dick got to know a lot of us in Arizona, and he used to come over every year for training and kind of a vacation. So I think it was 2014 or 2015. A good friend of mine, Greg Thomas from the Gilbert Police Department, got a hold of me. He said, "Hey, Dick's coming," and he goes, "What do you think about putting together this, putting together like a multi-agency training night to train with Dick?" I'm like, yeah, that's cool. So all of a sudden it blew up, and we had all these people interested in coming, and it just kind of evolved into this 2-day seminar. And we wanted to make it very specific to not newer dogs. We want to make it all about like high risk deployments. And it went off with such a big success that first year that the next year people wanted to do it again. And because we did some badass shit, man. And the second year we even had it set up so our breachers came out. We let everybody get exposed to doing explosive breaches with their dogs. We were doing all sorts of pretty cool stuff. And we're like, we got to name this thing. So what are we going to name it? Well, what do you think we named it?
No shit.
The high risk deployment seminar.
High risk deployment.
And so then I think it was a couple years later, I saw your guys' stuff. I'm like, hey, these dudes stole our name, but you probably had no idea.
Yeah, we had no idea.
Fun. Yeah, it was, yeah. So I wasn't really talking shit about you, but
yeah, because then Bradshaw calls it that too. I think when he does that too. We saw that after.
And then I remember when the guys from Albany County Sheriff's Office had us up to instruct at what the fuck were they calling it? The Canine Street Tactics Seminar. And they caught shit from other people online about, they're like, oh, there doesn't look like any tactics here. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, boy.
I gotta shut the fuck up. Like, come on.
That's the one
like,
thing.
We have to call it something. I mean, like, what do you want me to call it?
Social media has been so good for us, but it's also so toxic. It's just like, I don't know if you guys are on that LEO K9 group on Facebook, but God, I feel bad for the newer handlers that post something on there looking for advice, because they get maybe one or two things of good advice, and then they just get lit up by a bunch of, I don't know why we eat our own so bad sometimes, but we're all out there trying to do the good thing and spread the good word, right? That's what it's all about. But
yeah, it's funny. Dick, he was in Aruba for a long time.
Yep.
And I go to Aruba every year. I've been going there for about 20 years. And I was at one point selling dogs to the police department there. So when I would go there, I would have a day or two of my vacation where I'd be with the canine guys. And the police canine guys hated Dick Van Leenen, and Dick hated the police canine guys.
Yeah.
And they would just both, it would be, I would be with the canine guys. He would drive by. They would be, F him. And I'm like, I don't even know the guy. I don't want nothing to do with it. And then I posted something about a picture of me with him, and he commented on, that's not what the Ministry of Defense dogs or I'm like, yeah, I don't want nothing to do with any of your stuff. I don't know any, because he was working with the prisons there for a while.
He's back in Holland now.
Yeah, so that it doesn't matter what country you're in, whatever, it gets goofy like that. So Ted, real quick, today's Tuesday, the 21st. There was a public hearing this morning out in California about that assembly bill to ban the police canines as bite dogs. Our friend Greg Tani from DTAC posted about it, and give an update on
it was
what
Bill
you know
742, and it was in the Assembly of Public Safety. They had a 6-2 vote today, or well, it was a 6-2 vote. There's 8 members on the committee. obviously with straight party lines. So Democrats voted for the restriction of this, and the Republicans voted no. I'm not a politician. Obviously, I don't like politicians. They're all shitheads as it is. But there was a straight party line vote. And this is the one where it restricts the use of force with dogs, like specifically biting. If you're not following this, they want to remove the ability for police departments to allow dogs to well, let me rephrase this. They want to restrict police departments from using dogs in the apprehension phase of detention via biting. But it doesn't restrict search and rescue, explosive detection, narcotics detection, just anything that revolves around biting. My problem with it, the way that they have it phrased, is me being a white dude. I'd have a problem with the way they're selling this. They're selling it as some social justice stuff for preventing, quote unquote, and this is their words, not mine, Black and brown people from being victimized by police departments. And so it definitely, I think, has some problems. It now, I think, it'll go straight to the Appropriations Committee in California. And then if it passes there, it'll go to the Senate for a vote. And after that, I assume if it passes, it goes to the governor for passage. But, other guys in the industry have done, like our last guest that we had on before, Scott, they did an episode on it at the Shots Fired thing about, and obviously the guys at DTAC have done their back and forth on it. I actually want to have an actual California politician, a sitting California politician, talk about this in an actual like conversation. I don't know that that's going to happen, but that's the goal that I'm moving after this conversation after we're done here. But so Scott, give me a little bit of the background. And on top of that, I want to point out too that this is the only one generating news. New Mexico actually went a step further. They not only want to do the same thing California's doing with dogs, but they want to remove all chemical agents. So no pepper ball, no mace, no C4, no tri-chambers. They want to also remove any electronic stuff. So no tasers, no taser shield, none of the fancy shit. So literally you have hands-on firearms and a baton. Like those are your options if it passes in New Mexico, if you're a cop.
Yep.
Which,
Yeah.
I guess
Crazy,
give everybody carbureted Crown Vics back too. Like I don't know what the fuck I like. People have lost their goddamn mind. So talk a little bit about being out there, because we don't have a problem here, but being out there, talk a little bit about like the climate and how this is like operating now.
Well, first of all, I'm in Arizona and I worked in Arizona. So, but it's, Arizona up until very recently was a very conservative state. And we have a lot of people fleeing California and moving here, which unfortunately they're bringing their politics with them. From talking, because I know a lot of guys in California, I train there a lot, and it kind of seems like it came a little bit by surprise. And the interesting thing to me is because you watch the news and you hear about, the big cities in California and all the restrictions they have, and how politically correct the law enforcement has to be. But yet, you talk to the guys that work in Southern California, and they're still doing good old fashioned cop work. They really are. I mean, you see it on national news. They're still chasing cars, which my department got a no pursuit policy probably 25 years ago, and these guys are still chasing cars through town and deploying dogs, and the thing is they're doing good work too. They're not just I'm sure there's some bad examples here and there, but for the most part, they're doing it right. My biggest concern with this is, it really is an officer safety thing. And I know politicians and legal experts hate us using that officer safety thing or officer safety word. But, my opinion, the whole point to a bite apprehension dog, they're locating tools first, right? I mean, we use them to locate things that we can't. In this case, we're locating a human suspect. And the purpose of that dog is to create reactionary time and distance between us and a suspect that's in hiding, waiting for us. Because we all know how potentially dangerous that can be. And I think the thing that they're forgetting is how many, and I think you guys would agree, How many of our deployments result in no violence at all because the dog is there? I mean, I know you guys have had it. I've had numerous deployments. Most of our deployments go this way, where we show up, we give dog announcements, and what happens? They come out, hey, I don't want anything to do with the dog. I give up. I surrender. We've all had those stories. I remember we got a new sergeant, and we had a working sergeant that had a dog, and we were at training one night, and they kicked, and I don't even remember what the call was, but they were asking for a dog, and this guy is not really barricaded because he's outside of his front door, but he's like saying, hey, send every cop you got. I'll take them all on. He wanted to fight everybody. Well, we have some options there, right? The dog showed up. He didn't even get the dog out of the car. The bad guy heard the dog barking in the car, and he's like, hey, man, I don't want anything to do with that dog. Turn around, put his hands behind his back. That kind of stuff happens all the time. And, Mike Reaver from Madalhurst was doing a podcast about this recently and brought it up too. I wish that the general public or the politicians, and I think we need to make an example of that or bring that up to defend this, because most of our deployments end with zero violence. And I really do believe that the fact that the dog is there is what results in that. There's something about our brains. We don't want to mess with a dog. We don't want to be attacked by an animal. It's kind of like being eaten by a shark or being attacked by a bear. The most people in our psyche, we don't want to go one-on-one with that dog. And in those cases, like, we don't have to taser them. We don't have to beanbag them. We don't have to, go hands-on with them. As soon as the dog is present, they give up. I had one that really stands out to me too. We had a shooting suspect that broke into a completely unknown innocent person's apartment, and he was barricaded for probably 2 hours. And I finally, because we were back at cover, and I finally talked the bosses in. I'm like, hey, let's go up, breach the door. Let me give some dog announcements in the door so that the bad guy can tell that the dog is in the doorway and he knows it's imminent, the dog's coming in. And this is a guy that had been eating gas and doing all sorts of stuff. And as soon as he thought the dog was actually coming in, he came out and surrendered with no incident. And let's face it, guys, I mean, that's really the way most deployments go. And I think the general public doesn't realize that a police dog bite is a pretty rare occurrence. And it's
it is,
and
it doesn't happen that often. And,
yeah.
the one thing that's nice about this show, and like we said, the internet is toxic, but that about this platform, not just Working Dog Radio, but like all the other podcasts and stuff, is we get a little bit of perspective. And so having guests on here from all over the world and all over the country, we have a pretty good, not necessarily like Eric and I, but I think we have pretty good perspective, but our guests have some really good perspective. And I mentioned him earlier in the podcast, Steve White. He's been on before. He was retired from Seattle PD for like ever. Like, I think he got his first dog off the Ark because he was a fucking Air Force handler before that. So like, long time, right? And Steve, if you're listening to this, I love you. And Washington went ahead and did that thing during a couple of years ago, during the summer, the George Floyd summer, where
summer love, baby.
Yeah, that's what
summer
I call
love.
it. I wanted to refrain from saying that's what I call it, summer love. Where they went ahead and did some pretty hefty police use of force revisions, is what I'll call it.
Oh yeah.
There were several bills that happened within that. I mean, it was not just limited to canine, but within that, it made canine deployments almost not necessarily impossible, but like the thresholds for bites were real. Like, it was a really, really thin like analysis between, am I going to do something else or am I going to bite this guy? And there were some dogs killed and handlers injured as a direct result of that on Seattle PD, and not just in some other places in the state. And since then, I guess in February of this year, the governor signed some legislation rolling back a lot of those reforms. Not like completely rolling them back, but they kind of stepped back a little bit, like, yo, hold on a second. We didn't think this all the way through. So I'll say this. California is not really the best at remembering that they live in a country with 300 million people. They tend to focus on their little bubble that they live in, and they think that the rest of the country is just going to follow them because they're fucking California. And the politicians particularly, just reading a lot of the comments from both sides, both the Bloods and the Crips, like they both kind of like have that mentality. And I want to, like, what I would like to for the rest of the country to remember is no one cares what California does. And two, for you're in California, we don't care that you're trying to ban police dogs. We're not going to follow you. There are some states that will follow, like Oregon will follow a lot of times just because of Portland. But for the rest of the country, we don't care. There is an additional 240 million people that live in this country, and we don't let. And I mean, we have a weak form of central government as it is, because the 10th Amendment is there for a reason, to tell other states to fuck off and tell the feds to do the same thing. And it's an interesting concept, because I think a lot of times people in California in general lose perspective, both in law enforcement and both in legislation. And this is a prime example of a lack of perspective. And
I agree with you on some things, but I do disagree on, unfortunately, because I've talked to a lot of people throughout this country and other places. I've got a guy that I trained years ago from Idaho, northern Idaho. I mean, Idaho is supposed to be like God's country, super conservative and stuff, but he had recently gotten a hold of me probably 6 months ago and said that even his chief was talking about getting rid of their bite dog program. And he's never had a bad bite. Never. He's done phenomenal work. And I think sometimes these liberal administrators, I think they forget that their job is to represent the people that live in their jurisdiction. It's not to represent the people that live in Los Angeles or New York. They need to represent the people that they live, or where they work. But I gotta say, I mean, Daryl and I bought a dog actually from Connecticut this last year, and great dog, only had like 3 months on the street, and they were ending their bite dog program, and we ironically ended up selling them to Eugene, Oregon, which I thought was kind of weird, because of all the places you'd think would be ending their bite dog program would be Oregon. But it seems, and I will say this, guys, we got to do it right. We got to do a better job. I mean, we all see some of these videos of some of these dog situations, and where guys are can't get their dogs off live bites, or make bad decisions. And dude, I consider myself pretty good at my job, but I made some big mistakes, and we all have had those moments. And fortunately, when I made mistakes, they ended up turning out okay. But this is a time where we really have to represent, and we got to put our best foot forward and show that the police canine industry is a very professional industry, and we take it very seriously, and because it's a tool that we don't want to lose. I mean, I know you guys know this, but if that tool gets taken away, cops are going to pay. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, you can't ask for a better tool to create that reactionary time distance between you and an armed suspect than a dog. There's no better tool out there, and we know that from decades of experience. But if we don't do a better job of selling our profession and putting our best foot forward, it seems to be the way of the world. It's the way it's going to go.
Greg Tawney from DTAC and Police Canine Radio posted today. He went to the open forum and got to speak, and he said it was a very poor turnout from the canine community.
Yep.
Very poor. I don't know if everybody's hoping that someone else does it, or they ain't gonna do it. But they did it 6-2, and they're putting it as a bill. They're not going to put it out as a vote to the populace. They're going to just the liberal assembly there in California will vote on it. So we'll see how that happens.
It's scary.
Well, Scott, this is a good episode, man. There's a lot of information in here. Hopefully people keep an eye on it. People out in California, get out there in New Mexico. I don't know if Arizona is next, and if they fall in line with that
I
trio of kooks there,
I really hope not, but we'll see. It seems like the whole country is going to get a little weird. Know. So,
right. So, Scott, if people want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
They can check me out at Scott Paraclete K9 on Instagram. Daryl's also got a Paraclete K9 Instagram page. And that's pretty much it. We've got the website, which is what we recommend to most people. It's www.paracleteK9.com.
Letter K number 9.
Letter K number 9. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Letter K.
Do you guys put your schedule on there?
You know what? And that's, I'm glad, because we kind of talked about that earlier. We don't, because we both kind of have lives outside of this. And honestly, we don't do this for the money. and that's going to sound kind of gay. Oh shit, I can't say that, can I? But
No, you can.
one of the things I fell in love with Daryl was one of the first times I met him. He made a statement, and he said, if I give just one handler one piece of information that saves his life someday, I've done my job. And I think that's why we get along so well, because we don't do this for the money. We do it to kind of stay, because we love it, first of all, and we want to get information out there. So we don't schedule classes. The way people get a hold of us and say, hey, when you've got a class or when you're going to do this, we tell them, you know what, we'll set something up with you. If you can host us, we'll come out. We'll get more people to come. So we do it on an as need basis. We don't schedule things really in advance. So when we have events coming up, then we put it on the website and we put it out there on social media. But we don't schedule like one seminar a month or anything like that. Yeah. And maybe things will change. Well, that's good. Maybe things will change, but it's it's just a retirement gig for right now. So
yeah, cool. Ted, what about you?
Torchlight K9, letter K number 9, on the Instagrams and the Facebooks. And then also my personal one, Ted_Summers on Instagram. That's all the canine stuff that we're doing day to day. We also have Torchlight Pets if you want to watch us my trainers train doodles. And we have a sheepdog right now, or like a Jack Russell Terrier thing that's biting everybody right now, which so yeah, he could be a police dog. He's yeah, but and then HRD, we have one HRD Police Canine. It's on Instagram and Facebook, and then of course the podcast is working_dog_radio, and yeah, that's where we put all this stuff out. So yeah, Scott, this has been good, very man. Cool. I appreciate it, and it's a good conversation.
I can't thank you guys enough. I kind of wondered, like, what do you want me on here for? You guys had some big name people on this show, so. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and get some information out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really, really glad you get on there. Yeah. I know we're cutting into your dinner time.
Nah, not at all. Like I told you on the phone, man, I could talk dogs all day. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, we do talk dogs all day. So.
Me too.
All right. Guys, thanks for checking in, tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yep.